All right, my friends, it is now time for the Soulful Psalms segment of Beacon of Truth. The Soulful Psalms is where we take one of the Psalms from the wisdom literature of the Old Testament, the hymnal of our Jewish brothers and sisters that we also include in each and every holy sacrifice of the Mass. We take one of the Psalms and we connect it to your everyday life. And what's great about the Soulful Psalms now, just like the Beacon of Truth playlist episodes, are its own podcasts. Just go to Podcast Central at the EWTN website or download and listen on the EWTN app, which also gives you a tremendous amount of fantastic content. And also on your favorite podcast medium, such as SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes, to download and listen to the Soulful Psalms. Well, today we're going to continue our look at Psalm 62. And Psalm 62 is in Book 2 of the Psalms. And this particular psalm is a psalm of David. So Psalm 51 to 72 are all attributed to David. Now, but this is one of three psalms that also refers to Jeduthun. All right. So in the prescript or superscript of this psalm, it says, Lemenzeach, Jeduthun, Mizmor David, for the choir master, intoned like Jeduthun, a psalm of David. So Jeduthun means lauder or praiser in Hebrew. And we see Jeduthun referred to in Psalms 39, this one, 62, and also Psalm 77. So again, David wrote this psalm, gave it to the choir master to put music to it, but then he wanted it to sound like Jeduthun, like probably another tune, maybe Psalm 39 or Psalm 77. He wanted that same kind of melody that Jeduthun had written to have Psalm 62 sound like that. Right? So we have already started this psalm, but we're going to pick up in verse 11 and hopefully get to the end of the psalm, which is just verse 13. It's only 13 verses long. So again, as typical David, he started off this psalm, "In God alone is my soul at rest. My salvation comes from him. He alone is my rock, my salvation, my fortress. Never shall I falter." So again, David comes out honoring, praising, and glorifying to God as his rock, as his salvation, as his fortress. So we pick up now in verse 11, Psalm 62, verse 11. "Do not put your trust in oppression, nor vain hopes on plunder." This is very interesting. So, of course, David was a warrior king. He's the greatest king in the history of Israel, not because of his success in battles. And I think he just about won almost every battle that he was involved in. Um, but because of his heart, right? Acts of the Apostles said he was a man after God's own heart. So he knows well about battle and invasions and one of and the spoils of war, right? So when you conquered an enemy, you would despoil them, right? That means you would go in and take their land and take their possessions and their houses and even some of the people, to act as slaves, quote unquote, slave, not chattel slavery, but more like indentured servitude, right? Because chattel slavery was strictly forbidden by Jewish law, which said you were once slaves in Egypt yourselves, therefore you shall not enslave anyone else. And so, but David said, because I can, we have these possessions, we conquered our enemy. We shouldn't trust in that. In other words, we don't trust in our own strength, right? We don't trust in our own abilities, and we look at how I would look at this verse today. It's easy to elevate ourselves over other people by crushing someone's spirit. When Sir David talks oppression or vain hopes on plunder, sometimes we do that, don't we? Sometimes we belittle other people. Sometimes our own weaknesses and our own prejudices cause us to hurt someone, with our words or by our actions. And so we think, I'm better than this person, and therefore I get to treat this person a certain way, or I get to act a certain way because this person is just not a nice person, or they're someone who makes me uncomfortable, whatever it is. And David said, don't put your trust in that. And that should not be how we should always look at someone to see uh, the face of God, the image and likeness of God in the person standing in front of us. So sometimes it's just easy to make fun of and belittle people to elevate our own egos. But I think David and, of course, the Lord is warning us against that.
Well, and also one of the things that it's, I won't say it's necessarily a pet peeve. It's kind of a heartbreaking thing that even we tend to do among believers is we give criticisms thinking that we're helping people, but really it only tears them down when all you're doing is coming to them with, I really like it if we did this in this ministry, or this seems to be missing this, or especially if someone's learning how to grow in their faith or grow in their ministry and leadership. Like if you're ever criticizing or coaching, however you want to put it, always make sure you start it with the good things that you love about what they're doing as they're serving in the church or serving, as a coworker or in your family. Never just always come to them with the things that they need to work on. I mean, that's not necessarily, you don't mean to be bullying them, but if that's what you're doing, it essentially feels that way to that person, because I know I don't like to be critiqued by someone if all they're ever doing is telling me what I'm doing wrong.
Yeah. And again, you want to avoid doing that to boost your own ego, right?
Right,
I'm going to tell you how you can change so that I can feel better,
right.
or that, we should be criticizing people to help um, uh, kind of hone their, if they're a little rough on the edges, you want to help to hone their skills a little bit. It's like mentoring,
Yeah,
really, right? You don't criticize to tear down, you criticize in order to build up,
yeah.
right? To make someone better. That's the key. Not belittling someone to boost your own ego or just for the sake of criticizing, but to elevate that person, to help them to bring out more of the gifts that God has given them,
Yeah.
right? So they can work better in God's kingdom. That's the whole point of really of criticizing and critiquing. It's helping making someone better than they are.
And also,
You know?
sometimes we don't know what we don't know. So being curious, not judgmental, is really the approach we should have so that I noticed you did X. Why do you do it that way? So then you're curious about why they do it so that before you give them a critique, you understand, well, have you ever thought about, and then you're making a suggestion based on now understanding why they do it that way, because they don't see it the way that you see it. Even if your way is better or right or more efficient or more spiritually sound or whatever you're giving them, you're putting them in a place where they're being heard first, and then you're kind of lifting the veil and they go, I never thought of that. And then it's not a criticism, it's an understanding between two people's minds of this is how your brain works, this is how my brain works, this is how we mesh together.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I love that. Absolutely love that. And David continues the thought here at the end of verse 11. Even if riches increase, set not your hearts on them. So again, when he went and defeated the enemy, they took all the spoils, and then they grew wealthier, right? But don't set your hearts on them, right? So don't set our hearts on. So when things are going really well, we have a tendency to put God to the side and think that, okay, things are going well, I can just put my life in cruise control. But there's always, I think, a good thing living with some tension, even when things are going well. Not fearing that, oh, things are going well now, but just around the corner, things are going to get really bad, and living in fear. No, but living in confidence and joy, knowing, so like Job, right? Living, knowing that the Lord has giveth and the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. That in all things that the Lord be blessed. And David continues in verse 12. For God has said only one thing, only two have I heard, that to the God alone belongs power, and to you, Lord, merciful love. Right? So I love that when David is listening to God with his heart, he's hearing God say to him, um, God, you are omnipotent, you are omnipresent, you are all powerful, but yet you have a beautiful, merciful love that you want to share with me. You want to open your heart to me as I open my heart to you, Lord. And that you repay each man according to his deeds, right? So remember, Jesus talks about separating the sheep and the goats, the wheat from the chaff. So we always want to live our lives in a way that at the end of our lives, we're going to be counted among the sheep, right? We're going to be counted among the wheat that's reaped in and harvested for the kingdom of heaven. So all of our actions and the way we live our lives should always direct us toward that ultimate end.
For more on the Soulful Psalms with Deacon Harold Sivers, check out Beacon of Truth weekdays at 4 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio and streaming everywhere you listen to podcasts.